There we go.
Thank you. Oh, what happened? We are both hosts. He is gone. Dr. K.
I see Kamu is gone.
And I'm not the host. That's a problem also. Are you able to see people coming in?
Yeah, I see there are already 178 participants.
Please let them in.
Yeah, they are all coming in. They are all coming. We have got.
Are you letting them in?
Let me see. Oh, we need to admit them or admit all.
Yeah, admit all, yeah.
Let me admit all.
Yeah, because and also, can you make me host also?
Yeah, let me make you host.
Oh, no, the Kamu is back.
Okay.
Can you also make me host, Kamu?
Yeah, let me make you host.
Your GP referred you to clinics because she's confident about the care you'll receive. The online admission system allows you to complete your self-admission within minutes. Upon arrival, you're met by a friendly security guard who verifies your booking.
One is, can I scan a code, please? Thank you, sir. Enjoy your stay.
You're welcomed by a brand experience ambassador who directs you to admissions.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for choosing clinics. Please follow me.
Your GP referred you to clinics because she's confident about the care you'll receive. It's a seamless process to eliminate admission system where your patient allows you to complete your self-admission within minutes.
We have free Wi-Fi in all our rooms. Please log on to rate our service. Enjoy your stay.
A ward clerk then ushers you to your private room.
This is yours, sir.
As you arrive in your room, you'll receive a welcome SMS. Our newly designed private rooms come with personalized and complimentary products. For an enhanced experience, a client liaison will show you how to access the gym, salon, library, and recreational rooms. You can also order your meals online. Our state-of-the-art facilities, equipment, and professional staff assures you of our superior care. Post-procedure, one of our medical professionals is at your side with results. It's then your turn to rate our service. Our brand experience ambassador makes your exit as warm as your arrival.
Have a speedy recovery.
And you're discharged electronically. Our excellent service doesn't end there. Once home, you'll receive a message from us reminding you of your follow-up appointment and confirming your pre-ordered medication delivery.
Good evening, and thank you. And I think that's a wonderful video clip there from our marketing department. It's quite exciting to see the developments that are taking place within clinics. We trust that this will be the experience that anyone would have when they are admitted. The clinics, if it has to be that way, we trust that we'll not be sick, but if it does happen, colleagues who are here locked in were able to send their patient to one of our clinics, cell care group hospitals, this is the experience that they will enjoy once they're admitted today. And I just want to say welcome once more to our weekly webinars. An exciting moment once more to welcome all of you from different parts of the city, the region, the province, the country, to our weekly clinics webinars that we've been hosting since the lockdown in 2020 when we had the pandemic. And we continue to doing so because of your support and your constant presence when we invite various speakers to come and share their knowledge, experiences, and academic expertise with us at these weekly webinars. And it is one of those exciting moments this evening that we'll be doing so. And before we do so, I just want to do the normal routine announcements that we make sure that when we log in, we mute ourselves. We also switch off the videos so that we enhance the quality of reception that we have, because sometimes we poor networks because of various reasons, and we know that we're going through a time of load shedding at the moment, and it does affect us as we do our webinars and also presentation. But we also want to thank you that I think there is somebody who's on load shedding at this moment, but you are here with us. Whether there's load shedding or no load shedding, we still have lots of you following us and joining us. Saying following us is that there is also, these webinars are CPD accredited. We've got someone who deals with that matter from the HPCSA tonight. Make sure that when you register, you submit your information, correct information, your HPCSA registration number if you are with the HPCSA or any other council, other than the Nursing Council or Pharmacy Council or the Allied Health Professions Council, that you give us your proper information and email address so that we can download this information to the various regulator bodies that can process your attendance this evening. And note that these webinars are also recorded live on YouTube. So you may be able to access these presentations after the presentation, immediately after the end of the webinar tonight. We will be live, you'll get your recordings. So this evening is an exciting moment for me to welcome a friend, a colleague, Dr. Munyadziwa Kwinda, who will be speaking to us on professionalism in the era of social media. And Dr. Kwinda is a medical specialist in family medicine with a special interest in bioethics and health law, for which he holds an MSc Med in bioethics and health law with the University of the Witwatersrand. And he also has a Bachelor of Laws degree with the University of South Africa. Dr. Kwinda is currently the Ombudsman of the Health Professions Council of South Africa for the past 9 years, quite a long time, and has acted in different roles in the HPCSA, including as the acting registrar, the chief executive. Dr. Kwinda was appointed as a senior medical superintendent before he joined the SPCSA of Donald Fraser Hospital in Limpopo immediately after his community service, which was quite a feat, straight from ComServe to being the superintendent, and served in that position for 8 years, after which he took a medical specialist training in family medicine position at, he was a specialist, but he took a position at Chilizini Hospital and also managed the National Health Insurance pilot projects in Limpopo before joining the HPCSA as the Ombud. You must not confuse him with the Health Ombud. We've got the Health Ombud, but we also have the HPCSA Ombud. The HPCSA Ombud deals with practitioner matters, and the Health Ombud deals with all matters related to healthcare delivery in the country. And Dr. Kwinda has been involved in different leadership roles at both as a professional and also in the community level, which are the following: with SAMA and many other board directorship positions in JUDASA, and also is a member and vice chairperson of the Medical and Dental Professions Board 2010 and 2014 in the HPCSA. He's a council member and member of the Audit and Risk Committee and Governance Committee at Valley University of Technology from 2017 to 2018, and a member of the National Health Research Ethics Council. That is what he has position is holding currently. And he's also an ordained pastor at the United Apostolic Faith Church, and is married with 2 children. And we are glad to have you this evening, Dr. Kwinda. As I was talking to him earlier, before the start of the webinar, that I've been trying to get him to speak to us, and he gladly accepted the invitation this evening to speak about this topical matter of professionalism in the era of social media. Dr. K, we're glad to have you tonight. Please share your knowledge and experience, and we hope to have a great interactive moment with colleagues who are practitioners primarily, and all of us who are users of the social media platforms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bila and the Clinics Health Group for having me. And greetings to everyone. Colleagues, I see some familiar names that one knows here or have interacted with. And I just really appreciate the time that has been given to me to just come and share a few thoughts on the topic at hand. When we had I think a week or 2 ago, there have been some social media activities that has been happening that affects some members of our profession. And I was asking myself, is this a coincidence? It's just like also the presentation that I had last week at UNISA on the right of healthcare workers to embark on industrial action. That happened while we had the strike that was going on and all the things that were reported on media. So it is really a pleasure to share some few thoughts with colleagues. And as Dr. Bila has said, those who don't know me, that is me, and I will now switch off my video so that it does not affect the bandwidth. You know, as a way of really introduction, if all of us here were to be honest to ourselves, we can come to a point of saying, majority of us, if not all of us, that there are certain things that we have said and certain activities that we have embarked on, that if those activities were to become known by everyone else, especially through the social media platforms that we have in the days that we are living in, many of us wouldn't love to be associated with that. And that's why, you know, when you see something on social media, some things land on social media by mistake. Some they land there deliberately. When we deal with such information, we need to be careful how we deal with it. One day it can also be you. And this we have seen, colleagues, happening in all spheres of life, even for some of us who are ministers of the gospel or pastors, where we have seen things landing on social media, even on church WhatsApp groups that were not supposed to be there. And hence we have got this topic this evening, professionalism in the era of social media. And I believe there is a reason why this topic is crafted the way it is crafted, because we live in a changing world with lots of things that are happening around us. And whether we like it or not, it does affect us as professionals. And if we are not guided in terms of how we deal with these changes, sometimes we get into trouble without being aware that we are getting ourselves into trouble. So, I'm just sorry about something. I was just closing something. Let me just go back to my slides. My presentation is outlined as follows. I have a disclaimer, then I do an introduction. I will deal with the relevant constitutional rights and their limitations that is relevant to the topic at hand. Then I will deal with the definition of a profession or professionalism. And then I will deal with the relevant HPCSA verdicts that are related to the topic that we are dealing with. Then I will deal with HPCSA ethical guidelines on social media. Then I will conclude my presentation. Just as a disclaimer that the contents of this presentation are not representative of any organization I'm associated with, and the presentation was prepared using information that is publicly available. I just thought to remind you, some of you who have been following what has been happening in the social media a week or two ago about some of our colleagues. And I really took time to even read the comments, especially on Twitter and also on other platforms, on what people have been saying about this. And I want to deal, colleagues, with now the relevant section of the Constitution that deals with the rights that we have as citizens. And some of these rights are not only limited to citizens, but to everyone here in South Africa. And the first right that I'm going to be looking at is the right to freedom of expression, which is contained in Section 16 of our Constitution, which states that everyone has the right to freedom of expression, which includes freedom of the press and other media, freedom to receive or impart information or ideas, freedom of artistic creativity, and academic freedom and freedom of scientific research. And it further states that this right does not extend to propaganda for war, incitement of imminent violence, or advocacy of hatred that is based on race, ethnicity, gender, or religion, and that constitutes incitement to cause harm. Then the next right is the right of freedom of trade, occupation, and profession, which states that every citizen has the right to choose their trade, occupation, or profession freely, and that the practice of a trade, occupation, or profession may be regulated by law. Very critical. I'll touch on this later on. You know, the aspect that I put in bold, that while every citizen has the right to choose their trade, occupation, or profession freely, one needs to recognize that the practice of a trade, occupation, or a profession may be regulated by law. And that brings in a limitation of the right there. Then let me talk about the limitation of the rights that are entrenched in the Bill of Rights, because these rights are not absolute and they have limitations. And there are three things that I have picked up, that some of these rights, you can have a limitation within the right itself. And the example that I just gave in the previous slide is one of them. And another example of a limitation within a right is the right to have access to healthcare services, which is limited in that is your section 27, subsection 1, and subsection 2 brings in a limitation to that right of access to healthcare services, including reproductive health, in that it states that the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures within its available resources to achieve the progressive realization of each of these rights. So that is a limitation within a right itself. Another limitation is brought in by infringement on another right. So while everyone has the right to freedom of expression, for example, which include freedom of the press and other media, the exercise of such a right may not infringe on someone's right, for example, to human dignity, freedom and security of a person, or even privacy. And that's why, colleagues, as I will touch on this later on, it becomes important that as we express ourselves, even exercising our own rights, our exercise of the rights must not be an infringement on someone else's right. Then the last one is the limitation of the right clause in terms of section 36, which states that the rights in the Bill of Rights may be limited only in terms of law of general application, meaning that law must apply to everyone, to the extent that the limitation is reasonable and justifiable in an open and democratic society based on human dignity, equality, and freedom, taking into account all relevant factors. And those factors are stated in terms of section 36 of our Constitution. I'm not going to go into such details. Now, when we talk about the law of general application, and I'm just picking up now what is relevant to us, and I'm picking up the South African Nursing Council, the Health Professions Council of South Africa, and the South African Pharmacy Council. And I can say that even when you look at the Allied Health Professions Council of South Africa, you will find the same thing. And it's very important for our presentation this evening to understand the definition of unprofessional conduct in terms of these statutes that have established our councils that regulate us as professionals. How they define unprofessional conduct: it means improper, disgraceful, or dishonorable, or unworthy conduct, or conduct which, when regard is had to the profession of a person who is registered in terms of a particular act, is improper or disgraceful or dishonorable or unworthy. Now, colleagues, the definition of unprofessional conduct is quite very wide. And we need to be aware that at the end of the day, the determination is made by those who are regulating us to say, when regard is had to the profession of a person, is this proper? Is this a graceful conduct? Is this an honorable conduct or a worthy conduct of a practitioner registered with us? And also, statutory council are empowered to make rules relating to offenses under the chapters that deals with disciplinary powers of the boards and councils. And in terms of the Pharmacy Act is section 41, and in terms of the Health Professions Act is section 49. And this further state that provided that the powers of the council and of professional board to inquire into and deal with any complaint, charge, or allegation relating to a health profession under the chapter shall not be limited to the acts or omissions so specified. Now, this talks back, colleagues, to the Bill of Rights that we have, that may to choose freely an occupation, trade, but that may be regulated by law. And this is where we see now the statutes that have established our statutory councils, bringing in that element of how the practice of a particular profession may be regulated by law. Now, if we go further in terms of the law of general application, especially for those who are employed in the state, you have the explanatory manual on the code of conduct for the public service. And we know those of you who are employed in the state, that appointment letter will state the statutes under which you are appointed. And the Public Service Act is one of them. Now you have the Public Service Commission that has published an explanatory manual on the code of conduct for public service, which is a practical guide to ethical dilemmas in the workplace. And this deals with personal conduct and private interests, especially clause number 4.5. And I just picked up some of the things that I mentioned there. 451 says an employee during official duties dresses and behaves in a manner that enhances the reputation of the public service. The government and the community expect a high level of professionalism from public servants. And here, colleagues, is not talking about professionals. It's talking about anyone who is a public servant. There is an expectation from the state and the community of a high level of professionalism. And professionalism here means punctuality, initiative, dedication, skills, and quality in providing service. Dress should at all times be neat, decent, and respectable. Employees, especially those who deal directly with the public, should take care not to dress too informally or to look untidy. 452 says, an employee acts responsibly as far as the use of alcoholic beverages or any other substance with an intoxicating effect is concerned. It goes further to say employees should never be under the influence of alcohol or any other intoxicant while on duty. Apart from the embarrassment it might cause, this could adversely influence their rendering of services and interaction with other employees and the public. The morale of employees and the good team spirit are important in the functioning of an organization. It goes further to say employees must not disgrace themselves in the eyes of their colleagues. It goes back to the definition of unprofessional conduct which is disgraceful in the eyes of their colleagues by abusing intoxicating substances during official function. Even if an employee is off duty, he or she still remains a public servant and should always act responsibly so as not to embarrass the public service. Now, this, colleagues, is about the public service. And I will cite later on to say, even for us as professionals, whether we are on duty or off duty, we are still professionals, and the way we handle ourselves, the way we conduct ourselves can bring the profession that we belong to into disrepute or embarrass the profession or even the organizations that have employed us or that we are associated with. Now, as I said earlier, colleagues, most of these things do happen and they are never seen in the public. But we are living in the era, colleagues, where whatever we do, wherever we are, whether we like it or not, may end up into the public space even without our consent. Whether we were involved or not, whatever we do, somebody is taking a video, somebody is recording us, and that information can land in the public space, and we may not want to be associated with that. So it just brings a caution to say wherever we are and in whatever we do, especially colleagues, when we are involved in all these things of entertainment, using the things that we entertain ourselves with, we must be careful how we play around that. And I will deal with some specific issues later on. Now, let's look at the definition of a profession. And I love the definition that was done by Cruz and Cruz, who define a health profession as an occupation whose core elements is work based upon the mastery of a complex body of knowledge and skills, and a vocation in which knowledge of some department of science or learning or practice of an art founded upon it is used for the service of others. Now, its members, and I'm really emphasizing here, colleagues, the issue of professionalism, even in the era of social media that we are living in, that we are still governed by the codes of ethics, not by public opinions. There may be public opinions about the things that we do, but there are codes of ethics that governs us as professionals. And we also profess a commitment to competence, integrity, and morality. Altruism, which talks to the best interest of our patients, that becomes our priority. And the promotion of the public good within their domain. Now, I have put this in bold because some of the conduct that we see in social media from colleagues, you ask yourself, does this promote the public good? Is this what I am supposed to show on social media as a professional? More so, colleagues, when I can be identified, especially with the things that associate me with a particular profession. While doing what I am doing, am I promoting health, or I am promoting something else? And those are things, colleagues, that as professionals, we need to always keep at the back of our minds, wherever we are and in whatever we are doing. These commitments form the basis of a social contract between a health profession and society, which in turn grants the profession a monopoly over the use of its knowledge bases, the right to considerable autonomy in practice, and the privilege of self-regulation. A privilege that, sadly, colleagues, I have to say, we are losing this privilege of self-regulation bit by bit. And this should be a concern for all of us as professionals. And how we see this, the more cases that we see, colleagues, of us being dragged into the courts of law, especially the criminal courts, for act or conduct that came up of our practice, of our professions. All of us must be worried because we are losing the privilege of self-regulation. And the reality is we have got enough literature that proves that over the years, society is starting to doubt if we can self-regulate. And for us to remain self-regulating is because society still believes that self-regulation is in the best interest of society. Professions and their members are accountable to those that are served and society. Can I just ask those who have got their videos on to please switch off their videos? They become a little distractive. I realize that when somebody switches on the video, it also blocks the view on my presentation this side. So please, let's switch off our videos. Now, I just want to share with us relevant HPCSA guilty verdicts relating to social media so that, colleagues, we can all be aware of some of the colleagues that have got into trouble because of what they post and becomes available to everyone, so that we can learn and avoid such things. This one came up during COVID-19, and this was a professional conduct finding against a doctor who was found guilty of unprofessional conduct. Of course, conduct which, when regard is said to the profession, that is from the definition of unprofessional conduct, in that on or about the period February 2020 or to April 2020, you or your practice contravened sub-regulation 11.5a of the regulations relating to COVID-19 by publishing misleading posts about coronavirus. Where were these misleading posts published? On social media. And without going any further, this person, colleagues, was found guilty. And although there are other 2 counts, the person was removed from the register of medical practitioners in terms of section 42, subsection 1, paragraph C. Now, removal from the register, colleagues, although there's a provision to apply for reinstatement, but that becomes very difficult, unlike a suspension, because a suspension is for a particular period. Now, when you publish your opinions about something, you are taking something that is in you, and when it is in you, no one bothers you. But the moment you put it out there, colleagues, it is in the public domain and actions can be taken against you. Here is another case of somebody who sent inappropriate and pornographic material to a client that they assessed. Now, these things, irrespective of the context under which that is done, whether it started from the other side or from the side of the practitioner, colleagues, it is something that we must guard against. Some consultations end up in relationships that become so cozy. And when such relationships become cozy, we let down all the guards and we end up doing things that we are not supposed to do. And colleagues, all these things are a record. Sometimes you may think you are going to delete that, and the person has already taken a screenshot and they have put it safely so. And when things get out of hand, even in that cozy relationship, that can be used against you. Now, when it's traced back to the fact that this person has been your patient, that becomes a very serious issue. And this person was effectively suspended for 2 years from practicing their profession. And as a requirement, they were required to attend some training on ethics, which is determined by the board. The next one is somebody who posted their graphic pictures, which are deemed confidential on social media without their consent, copies here attached. Now somebody says, this is information about me that this person posted on social media. Now, without consent, and we do know confidential information, you need to get a consent for that. This person was suspended for 2 years, only suspended for 3 years, on condition that they are not found guilty of a similar offense during the period of suspension, and that they must also pay a fine of 15,000, which was imposed by Prelim. The next one is somebody who used improper and ineffective communication about other practitioners on social media. As a result, you put the profession into disrepute. And this basically, colleagues, is contravention of ethical rule number 12. As a result, your conduct above, you damage the reputation of your colleagues and contravened the HPCSA ethical guideline booklet 16 on social media. Because this person got a caution and reprimand, and further that he must do a course on professional ethics within 12 months. Now, colleagues, I'm just sharing this HPCSA guilty verdicts, which are available on the HPCSA website, and it can only help you to go through them and see how our professional boards make these determinations so that you do not repeat the same mistake. So it's quite very clear why we are here, colleagues, that indeed the HPCSA ethical guideline booklet 16 on social media can be used against when there is a complaint that is lodged, if you are careless in the use of social media in whatever way. Now, let me go specifically to the HPCSA ethical guidelines on social media. And when we approach these ethical guidelines, we need to have the basis for that. And I just want to outline for us, colleagues, that before we talk about the ethical guidelines, it all starts with the Act. Now, our councils are empowered in terms of the Act to make rules specifying acts or omissions in respect of which the professional board or the council may take disciplinary step. And it's quite very clear that the powers of the board or the council to inquire into or deal with any complaint, charge, or allegation relating to a health profession shall not be limited to the acts or omissions so specified. Now, that goes together, colleagues, with the definition of unprofessional conduct. So as long as there is a complaint, as long as there is a charge or allegation of unprofessional conduct, the council or the professional board, and council I'm referring specifically to the pharmacy council or the nursing council, because in terms of the Health Professions Act, those are the powers of the professional board and not the powers of the council. So it does not have to be those acts or omissions so specified. The board can go outside of that. Next, colleagues, that we need to understand is that, may you please switch off your video? As I said earlier, I'm not gonna call names because this is on live on YouTube. Your name will be on record. That is another social media platform. We avoid to embarrass each other's colleagues as well. So let's just, colleagues, not switch on our videos. Now, when we have rules, colleagues, we also have what we call annexures to the rules. So we have the act that empowers our councils to make rules, and those rules have got annexures to the rules. Now, in terms of the Health Professions Act, the annexures to the rules talk to board-specific rules. So under our act, we have got 12 annexures. And one of our boards, which have got extensive rules in the annexures, is the Psychology Board. Now, after the rules, you have got what we call rulings. Now, rulings are when our boards or councils are faced with a situation where a matter is not covered in the rules and an inquiry is held, or the board or council makes a ruling on that matter, that becomes an ethical ruling. Now, if you look at the last bullet, it says, at an inquiry, the board concerned shall be guided first by the rules and the annexures to the rules, the ethical rulings or guidelines or policy statement which the board concerned or council makes from time to time. Now, what it means, colleagues, is that at an inquiry, the board or the council put the rules, the annexures to the rules, the ethical rulings, and the guidelines, and these also include the ethical guidelines on social media, and any policy statement of that board or council in dealing with the matter at an inquiry. It's very important to understand that. Now, although there is no specific rule, because if you look at I'll be specific now to the HPCSA guidelines. If you look at the HPCSA guidelines, you will realize that most of our ethical guidelines are linked to a particular rule. The same applies to the ethical rulings. They are linked to a particular rule. So although there is no specific rule relating to the use of social media, the following rules are relevant for practitioners to consider as far as social media is concerned. Rule number 3 that deals with advertising and canvassing or touting. As much as colleagues, we can use the social media for advertising and canvassing or touting, be careful that you are not contravening this ethical rule, in that your advertising must not be misleading. Your advertising must not be inciting the members of the public to think that they are suffering from a particular disease or condition. Your advertising must not become a canvassing. Canvassing basically, colleagues, talks about what politicians do. You cannot in your advert be saying that you are better than another practitioner.
touting talks in your advert, you must not use services that are not related to your profession. For example, you cannot use free Wi-Fi or the fact that you do photocopies in your practice as part of advertising for your professional services. That becomes touting because a free Wi-Fi is not related to the practice of your profession. May you please switch off your video. If your video is on, it is disrupting us. The issue of information on professional stationery. Colleagues, be sure, because you may be exposing yourself. The information on your professional stationery is not as prescribed in terms of rule number 4. The same applies to naming of a practice. I can tell you, colleagues, from my observation as I walk around, I realize that many of us are contravening ethical rule number 5 in terms of naming of our practices. Ethical rule number 5 will tell you how you need to name your practice. You need to use your name or the name of your partner in naming your practice. Not all these funny names that we see, colleagues, on our practices. This one of ethical rule number 12, one of the verdicts deals with that professional reputation of colleagues. No matter how you may be frustrated, even if you have lost a patient because of the negligence of a colleague, be careful. Don't release your frustrations on social media. That will get you into trouble. Again, ethical rule number 13 that deals with professional confidentiality. We have a case, and these colleagues, even on our professional platforms that we think or believe may be protected. When you share information that can be associated with a particular patient, and that patient becomes aware or a relative becomes aware, and you don't have the consent to share that information, colleagues, you will get into trouble. So even if you need an opinion from colleagues, get the consent of your patients. Because even if you can hide the identity of the patient, there can just be one thing that can identify with that patient. And we must never forget the issue of the POPI Act, even as we share information about our patients on social media. The issue of issuing of prescriptions. I mean, you can issue a prescription and send it through social media, but be careful that you are not contravening ethical rule number 17. Reporting of impairment or of unprofessional, illegal, or unethical conduct. Now, this becomes tricky, colleagues, because here it is a requirement for you to report somebody who is impaired or involved in unprofessional conduct, illegal, or... May you please switch off your video? I'll have to call on people to switch off their videos because this really comes up time and again. Unethical conduct. Now, when you air your frustrations on social media, you may be exposing yourself, but somebody can ask, if you are saying this, have you reported this to the HPCSA? If you have not, that can also be a complaint against you. Main responsibilities of health practitioners. This one I will deal with in the next slide. That is ethical rule number 27A, that says that a practitioner shall at all times, colleagues, act in the best interest of his or her patients, respect patient confidentiality, privacy, choice, and dignity, maintain the highest standards of personal conduct and integrity. And you need to ask yourself, when I am judged by the standard of my profession, will this be considered a highest standard of personal conduct and integrity? And for those of us who are employed, especially in the public sector, I went through the explanatory manual on the code of conduct in the public service. It talks about the same thing. When you are judged, will that be a higher standard of professionalism or of personal conduct and integrity expected of you as a practitioner? Then there are others about providing adequate information that talks about informed consent and keeping our professional knowledge and skills up to date. That talks to CPD. And maintain proper and effective communication with our patients and other professionals. Now, you will remember the other guilt verdicts that I spoke about earlier. Talks about improper communication. What is it that we are communicating through social media? And so on and so on. Now, social media describe the online tools and electronic platforms that people use to share content such as opinions, information, photos, videos, and audio. And this includes social networks such as Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and LinkedIn, content sharing platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. I see TikTok is not necessarily in our guidelines currently, but another content sharing platform, professional blogs such as emails, SMS, electronic journals, as well as those published anonymously. Colleagues, all these platforms are social media platforms, internet discussions forums. When you put in your opinions there or share information there, and even comment sections of websites, where you can comment. It can be an article on the media where you can send comments. Be careful, because all that, colleagues, is on record. Now, having become an important part of every aspect of modern life, including our professional lives, it is important to know how to manage and use social media responsibly as a professional. Because, colleagues, one thing we must never forget is that we are professional. As a means of communication, social media, if well managed, can significantly contribute to positive relationships between practitioners and their patients, or practitioner to practitioner. But poorly managed, it can destroy a lot, and with serious consequences, unfortunately, for us as practitioners. Now, before addressing the ills of social media, we also need to recognize the benefits that social media make available to us as health professionals. We build professional networks through social media. We can share ideas and information, offers and access professional and peer support. Campaigning platforms on issues common and important to the health profession. I mean, let's talk about all these campaigns that are being done, petitions that we all sign. I mean, when you look at how those petitions run, I mean, we have all been involved in all these petitions, the recent one, even about the HPCSA that was running around, which will tell you how many people have already signed. Now, what is interesting is that even on those petitions, by the way, when I go in there, I can see the other people who have also signed the petition. So your name is there, and we need to be aware of that. It becomes a benefit, but it can also get us into trouble. Following debates and developments relating to our areas of practice. Those are some of the benefits, colleagues, that now, even in the era of telemedicine, I'm not dealing with telemedicine today. In the era of telemedicine, these are platforms that are being used, and we need to be aware of them. With all these benefits, there are also challenges that comes with that. Social media can blur the lines between practitioner as a professional and a practitioner as a person, which can cause ethical tensions, including issues around patient confidentiality and professional boundaries. The standard expected of practitioners do not change because they are communicating through social media rather than face-to-face or through other traditional means. Social media does not offer a level of control over the extent and type of content shared than a face-to-face interaction. Colleagues, on social media, you do not know who is on the other side. You do not know who else is watching or who else is listening. You do not know if the other person is recording that or not. And you do not know to who will that recording be distributed to. At least in a face-to-face interaction, you have some form of control. Even if a practitioner uses social media in his or her personal capacity, his or her online activity may nevertheless bring the profession into disrepute. I've mentioned this earlier. Information posted online may be disseminated, whether intended or not, to a larger audience and may be taken out of context. You may mean good, and we have all seen that, colleagues. It can be taken out of context, and things can be said about that. And the moment people say things about that, it will get the attention of even your regulator, and you may get into trouble. You may be exonerated later on, but I can tell you, you will regret when you sit with a complaint lodged against you because of the things that you did sometimes in good faith, but they turn against you. Content posted on social media may also harm your employability and recruitment, limiting your professional development and advancement. Colleagues, this is a reality. Your potential employer visit. That's why when we do disclosures these days, they will want you to put in your handles, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and so on. And they don't just ask that. They want to go and check your activities there and say, can we employ this person? If everything that happens at the workplace, they put it on social media, how are we safe as a company? So we can limit ourselves as professionals if we are not careful on social media. While safety on social media may not be guaranteed, the following tips may assist practitioners to stay out of trouble due to social media posts or activities. Remember, you are always a health practitioner, whether on duty or off duty. And your professional character may be judged by the way you conduct yourself online. As I said earlier, colleagues, unprofessional conduct, and we have got a case law in that on the matter of the HPCSA vis-a-vis CRIF, that in fact, unprofessional conduct is not limited to your interaction with your patients. It goes outside a doctor-patient relationship or practitioner-patient relationship. Do not publish something on social media if you will not be comfortable having your patients, your colleagues or employers see it, or that you will not be happy to see it printed in a newspaper. So think of that before you can post something. You should not post images or comments that may be endorsing activities or behavior that could damage your professional reputation or in breach of your professional obligation. By the way, information about your location, such as GPS coordinates, may be embedded within photographs and other content and available for others to see. You know, colleagues, the reality is, I mean, many of us have seen with Google. Google will tell you where you were. It will give you the pictures that you took when you were there. So let us be cognizant of that, colleagues. Some places that we go to, you may not be want to be associated, although people may not see the background, but it may tell where you were. Remember that any content you post may be discoverable and is a permanent record, and never assume that you have posted online because the post may already have been shared or copied. Mentioned this earlier, you may go and delete, but somebody may have already shared that information or copied it. Be aware of your professional and employer social media policies, like we have in the HPCSA booklet number 16. Should you receive an inappropriate message from a patient via social media, you should politely re-establish professional boundaries and explain the reasons for doing so. And I'm saying, colleagues, if your patient or your client starts you and you realize this is inappropriate, please re-establish the professional boundaries, because if you follow that line, you may not know where that is gonna end. And this, we need to be conscious of it all the time. Do not provide health advice over social media to individuals with whom you do not have an established practitioner-patient relationship. And even when you do it, when a relationship is there, it must be done with utmost discretion. Maintain clear professional boundaries by considering the effects of accepting a patient, former patient, or a close relative of a patient on social media. Consider creating an online profile that is maintained as a professional page only, and patients can become contacts of friends of your professional page, which provides information relevant to the professional practice of you as a practitioner. And join professional social networking sites, which are more protected, but be careful even when you post things there. If a health advice, and we have got that case that we shared earlier, if a health advice is shared on social online, it must be evidence-based scientifically sound and generic, and the recipient must be directed to consult with a health practitioner in person before following through. Avoid these social media activities, taking photographs during surgery and other forms of care or treatment, making unsubstantiated negative comments about individuals or organizations, making informal and derogatory comments about patients, making comments that may be perceived as racist, sexist, homophobic, or otherwise prejudiced, using social media when stressed, tired, upset, or under the influence of alcohol or any other intoxicating substance. And always err on the side of caution when using social media. And as I conclude, I just want to play a short video clip which is on social media. I'm not gonna say anything about it. You will decide what you think about it. Let me share it. I hope I'll be able to get it. Okay.
Akekho la mthuthu ongagqoka lento. Lento ayifakwa ola mthuthu 7 years. Akekho ula mthuthu ogqoka lento. Assess. Samsophuza ready.
Colleagues, that is my presentation. And thank you so much for listening. And back to you, Dr. Bila.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwinda. Sure. I don't know how to comment, but I'm scared now. I'm on social media. Lest I say certain things that will make me get into trouble. But I think give us advice that you should always be mindful of what you are saying and be careful of what you are saying. In that last video clip, I have no comment to add. But thank you very much. It's quite been enlightening. Seeing that this presentation has been so well prepared, and we have got practitioners here. I know that it's available on YouTube because we are live on YouTube. Are you able to share the slides that you can share with the colleagues? I mean, if we've shared the slides with us, are you able to, that you can pass over to colleagues who may want to refer to the slides, because you've referred to many ethical rules of the HPCSA and the ethical rulings that might enlighten quite a number of our colleagues here.
No, Dr. Bila, it's not a problem. I will share the slides.
Okay, thank you very much. We've run out. We've got a few minutes left. I won't go into the details of this question, because it's somebody who's calling out for help. One of the practitioners, they've got a case against them. I think it's about the practice that they opened a practice and they were found guilty by the HPCSA, and they are not happy with the outcome of the ruling. Without getting into the details, how would you advise this person? Because I think it looks like they want to know if there is a ruling, or maybe just generally. Maybe that's how you should approach it. Once there is a ruling made by the HPCSA, what are the avenues for appeal? Because I think this is just what this matter is all about, of to getting information. I think one of the problems that the person is having is how to contact the officials within HPCSA to get some information, which is a second matter maybe that you should deal with. Maybe that's a general problem that I've encountered being approached by several people. I know that it's not dealing with social media. Maybe we can dispose of that initially. This first question is related to that.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Bila. I'll deal with it quickly. In terms of the processes of the HPCSA, you have got 2 levels. You have got a preliminary inquiry phase,
and an inquiry phase. Now, if you are found guilty as a practitioner at a preliminary inquiry phase, you have 14 days to respond. And your response should be abiding by the penalty, meaning if it's a fine, you will pay. Or you can actively reject and say, I don't accept the finding and the penalty. Now, two things. If you don't respond within 14 days, the matter is referred for inquiry. If you reject the finding and the penalty, the matter is referred to inquiry. Now, when the matter goes to inquiry, you may still be found guilty. If you are found guilty at inquiry, then in terms of Regulation 11, you can appeal the decision of the Professional Conduct Committee with the Appeals Committee of Counsel. If the Appeals Committee of Counsel uphold the decision of the Professional Conduct Committee, then you invoke Section 20, because then you have exhausted all the internal mechanisms of appeal. Then you go to the High Court. If you are not happy with the decision of the High Court, then you go to the Supreme Court of Appeal. If you are not happy with the Supreme Court of Appeal, then you go to the Constitutional Court, which is the apex court of our country. So that is basically the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kwinda. It's quite a long process. I know that you may have covered everything about this query, but in case they want to have contact with someone within the HPCSA administration, how would you advise them? Because they say they've been sent from pillar to post to get information.
I just see somebody who just wrote here. I see there are colleagues of mine who are responsible for these processes. And I will say, if they can send their query here, they can be assisted. I've just typed an email, which I know there are colleagues who are amending this email. Because I know communication is quite very clear that comes from our complaints handling unit in terms of the processes that have to be followed. But it is basically what I have outlined earlier on.
Yeah, you've covered that, yeah, but just for completeness sake. So I think I see you put there, for the person who made that query, if you could then send your comments or questions to legalmed@hpcsa.co.za, legalmed@hpcsa.co.za. So that's how you'll deal with it. But I think as you outlined, it is quite a long process that it's scary that it ends up at the Constitutional Court if one is not happy with the outcome throughout the processes that are pertaining to this case. There's another question that has been sent to me directly. Hello, please, can you touch on how to approach clients, patients who complain about healthcare practitioners on social media? Even using their names, I've seen this happen to colleagues and not know how to approach the situation. I don't know if you got the question well.
Yeah, I did get the question well. And I mean, one deals with such questions where colleagues must always know that beside being a professional, you are also a citizen of this country with all the rights. And that rights also include, if somebody defame your character on social media or any platform, you have the rights for civil litigation against that particular person. You are not prevented from doing that. Only thing is that when somebody has lodged a complaint, we do not necessarily advise that. I do know that we have got a case that I'm also waiting for, which is in the courts, where there is a psychologist who was not found guilty by a preliminary committee of inquiry, has opened a civil case against the complainant. And one is still waiting. I don't know, there's not been a judgment on this matter. But where somebody goes straight to the social media and complain and say things about
that are defaming your character, you have your rights in terms of the Constitution to open a civil case against that person with the civil courts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Colleagues, please, if you've got a question, you may post it on the chat line or just maybe raise your hand. Just one question. You mentioned that one of the advices that you've given, I think that was quite a good approach. The 2 slides that you presented, a guide to practitioners how to manage social media. And one of the advices given was for practitioners to join what I could call a practitioner or social media platforms where they are only. But now there's a plethora of WhatsApp groups. You know, by nature, they are not necessarily WhatsApp groups based on the fact that these are for discussing clinical matters. But in those discussion groups, you find that invariably colleagues discuss patient information, and you just mentioned that. So at every given moment, when colleagues just for educational purposes and share information and ask questions, so they should always get consent from the patients before they post pictures for patients. I mean, pictures for patients, because I found some of them quite helpful and useful for continuous education, even though they are not necessarily registered as a PD platform platforms. Yeah, as I said.
Okay. No, thank you for that question, Dr. Bila. And that's why I emphasize a point that there are ethical rules that we must always be cognizant of as we use social media. Those platforms are quite very good. We can quickly learn from each other. But the simple thing, colleagues, that we need to do is that if you're gonna post information, even about the health status of your patient, beside ethical rule number 13, we have got Copy Act, as I said earlier, get the consent of your patient. And many patients, if they know you are doing that in their best interest, to say, we have got a group of colleagues and I'm just gonna send this and hear what their views are. And you explain that to the patient says, you can go ahead. And I will even go further, Dr. Bill and colleagues, and say, put it even in writing to say, I have obtained consent from the patient for me to do this. That will assist you should the patient comes back. And many times I can tell you, when you have spoken to your patients respect us, patients trust us, and many patients will never come back to haunt you because you have communicated with them. You provided them information why you want to share that with colleagues.
Thank you. I know it's very clear. Maybe before we close, I know that you put a picture, I mean, the last video and the first two pictures. There's been a comment by the HPCSA on this matter. These two of our colleagues, young practitioners, quite, when you look at them, you like them, you know. I hope I'm not going to be found guilty for saying I like those guys now. But what maybe just explain, I know that you've spoken about it. These two colleagues, the doctor that was in the social media in the last few weeks, and the conduct, and maybe they explain the rationale behind the ruling by the HPCSA on this matter, because it's quite a matter of serious discussion in the social media. You know the case I'm talking about.
Yes, Dr. Bila, I don't, you know, there is a reason why I started with the pictures and ended with the video. And in between, there is information that I've provided from both our acts in terms of the definition of unprofessional conduct, and also went into the public service for those who work in the public service. What is expected from the explanatory manual to guide public servants and even went deep into our ethical guidelines. And the whole intention was to say, colleagues, make your own judgment. At the end of the day, if a complaint is lodged with the HPCSA, is the board that makes that particular determination if that conduct constitutes unprofessional conduct. Thank you, Dr. Bill.
Okay, the last two questions I like. We'll end with the last one, quite topical. If one becomes aware of a colleague who is slandering his reputation on social media, should one approach the colleague or the HPCSA as a first point of call? What's your advice?
You know, my advice will be, let's first be collegial and approach the colleague and make them aware of what they are doing. But that also does not prevent one from, at the same time, approaching the HPCSA. But my advice will be to say, let's be collegial, to say, colleague, what you are doing, I do not like, and please. And at times, you may even need to cause the person to apologize on the same platform, which they've posted something about you themselves, and not apologize on the side. And if a colleague really is becoming impossible, then you can approach the HPCSA. So at the end of the day, it really depends on the person who is harmed by whatever slandering or accusations that are posted on social media.
Okay, the last one, thanks for that comment, Doc. The last one was sent to me directly also, and the person is asking your view about the social media incident involving the Ministry of Health, Limpopo, but there is a ruling on this matter by the HPCSA. Perhaps if you explain the rationale.
This one is a matter that I would say is sub judice.
Oh, is it?
HPCSA, and I wouldn't want to say anything on this platform. Thank you.
So the MEC has appealed.
Chairperson, I'm not sure because I do not know. I know the process is, there is a finding of a prelim, as I explained earlier. So I've not followed in terms of whether the MEC abided by the findings and the penalty of prelim, or the MEC rejected that. So I'm not privy to that information. Hence, I wouldn't love to say anything about it.
Okay, thank you for now. It's quite fair for you. Yeah, the last colleagues are coming now with comments or questions. So I'll have to take this one. So I didn't want to pass 7:30. There's one about Farouk. Disclosures and profiles do not necessarily absolve one from their ethical obligations. I think it's just a comment today.
Yeah, that's just a comment.
Yeah. I don't know this one. Farouk also, I'm not sure about your question here. Also, my colleague, especially with respect to COVID, maybe if you can explain what you mean here, Farouk, Dr. Mohammed. Is it about the finding on COVID?
Or maybe it may be that case, Dr. Bila, that I presented on somebody. There were two things there. Is the person airing their views about COVID on social media?
This is the recent finding by the HPCSA, quite recent.
It was last year. It was last year, Dr. Bila.
I thought there was, okay, there's a
although it happened in 2020.
Yeah.
But now there were two things there. Is what the person was saying on social media about COVID, which was a contravention also of the COVID regulations at the time. Colleagues will know that at that particular time, we were not allowed to just say things that will be in contravention. The regulations were very clear about what we say or do in line with the regulations. So that's why in the guilty finding, there was also a mention of the contravention of the COVID-19 regulations.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to listen to you, quite eloquent and very clear in terms of what is expected of practitioners, in terms of our conduct and professionalism in the social media. It's been quite information. We've received quite a lot of information that will help us to improve on our conduct and where we are lacking, and to make sure that we do things the right way in terms of the ethical rules of the HPCS and also in terms of our professionalism, whether we're employed in the public sector or the private sector. And I just want to take this moment to thank you very much for taking your time to come and share your thoughts with us at this webinar, Clinics. And on behalf of Clinics Health Group, I just want to say thank you very much, Dr. Kwinda, and all your colleagues that work with you at HPCS for a good job that you're doing. And also to thank all of you colleagues who've joined us this evening, sitting here patient and listening to all the talk given by Dr. Kwinda, and also the interaction that we've had over this last 1.5 hours or so. And also my colleague Kamo from marketing department and the other colleagues that we work together in making sure that we bring you on a weekly basis, experts, practitioners and researchers from different fields. And as we always say, please, colleagues, amongst you, there are quite a number of people who are quite experienced. And if you have something to share with us from your experience, from your research that you're doing, please do not hesitate to contact us at webinars@clinics.co.za or send information directly to myself, Rbila at clinics.co.za, Rbila with double L at clinics.co.za. And we'll be glad to interact with you and hope you in as one of our speakers in the future. And may you have a good evening. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.